of the objectives that they want. Some people in this House, whether it comes to Brexit or Northern Ireland, simply prove they don't know how to negotiate. They actually hand over the incentive to the other side to sit tight and then complain to the here about the consequences. The fact that Sinn Féin aren't here in this House tonight is a demonstration of one of the problems we face in Northern Ireland. They boycott this place, they boycott the executive, they boycott the Assembly, and of one party or other parties. And we will continue to work with the Secretary of State in the coming days and weeks, and he knows this, to try to get that Assembly up and running. But as the Honourable, we have put proposal after proposal after proposal, and they have been rejected. We will continue, however, to work at it because we know the importance of the restoration of the Assembly and the Executive. To achieve an outcome in which people can be satisfied. The Kingdom is achieved, one that doesn't undermine the economic or the constitutional position of Northern Ireland. When people not only does it work in terms of a north-south border, but it must not implement as was reflected in the letter to Donald Tusk that the Prime Minister sent in August. In the sense that laws will be made for Northern Ireland which Stormont, even if restored, would have no say. Would anyone here have any say? Nor by the European Commission or the European Council through appropriate procedures. But it is also contrary to the basis respect the institutions north-south. You cannot undermine the position within the United Kingdom, where most of our trade and balanced deal. And finally, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to bring my remarks to a close earlier than I might have otherwise, given the shortage of time. I want to say to the Secretary of State, he's aware from the demonstration, the silent, dignified marches and walks that took place in Belfast on Friday and Saturday, the tens of thousands of people who turned out in the streets to demonstrate their concern for devolution settlement when it comes to abortion, by having this imposed without any proper consultation whatsoever, and the fact that they remain concerned about how the consultation may be carried out going forward, and they simply want their rights to be respected. And in closing, can I urge the Secretary of State to continue to work with us, the Belfast MPs, particularly in relation to the future of the Secretary of State has said about the lack of powers in Northern Ireland can be used to ensure the future of this great and finally, in my own constituency, the Northern Ireland Hospice, excellent, fantastic institution which we in the DUP in Northern Ireland were happy to ensure was able to be rebuilt through the £2.1 million given to that, as well as another cocktail of rescued from its current predicament. The Chancellor of the Exchequer mentioned it in his speech, and want to see this with me to discuss what can be done taking that forward. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I hope the Secretary the strength of feeling that exists on these benches on these issues.
Fiona Bruce.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, ministers will understand that I am disappointed that we've been able to discuss the reports on human trafficking and gambling this evening, given that they were reviewed as a result of the bill. So I appreciate an assurance from ministers that these debated in this House at the earliest possible date. I was surprised at its brevity, given that it represents a seismic change to the law in Northern Ireland. Belfast in recent days. It is my fervent hope too that any change to the law on abortion, a sensitive devolved issue, Ireland Executive. However, if that doesn't happen, and we have to be realistic, if an executive is not reformed by 21st October, the people of Northern Ireland will find themselves in a situation the provision of abortion on 22nd October, with no guarantee that anything will be put in place until 31st of March. Where there effectively will be no law regulating until just before a baby is capable of being born. For clinics to be vetted and registered, none of which will exist. Acceptable. I believe this House has failed Ireland in this Act. This bill, as I say, was rushed through. It's a cases on Northern Ireland, a more permissive abortion rate. It's unacceptable that there should be a 5-month period during which abortion surely it cannot be right, very briefly, but
there'll be 100,000 children would not be allowed today. So
thank the member for that. I just believe it is absurd to remove a law 5 months before we are requiring a new law into its place. So I have a few questions. Firstly, could the ministers give more detail of the review, which give inadequate information on some really key issues? Regulations, one line on that is insufficient. Matter of such gravity. Secondly, given the uncertainty over the new framework, how is the health and safety of women of Northern Ireland going to be protected during the 5-month period? From 22nd October mean that Northern Ireland is not compliant with the Istanbul Convention's requirement for an offence of forced abortion. This is serious. The whole point made by the opposition, by those who brought this forward, was that abortions to take place up to 28 weeks in Northern Ireland. Fifthly, although the report mentions clarity for medical professions, can advice from the Attorney General of Northern Ireland, as he will be from the Northern Ireland Human Rights Commission.
We're now coming to a maiden speech where there are no interventions allowed. Lisa Forbes.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, for the opportunity to deliver my maiden speech. Members in defending the rights of our citizens. Honourable members will know that made a great difference to the lives of many of my constituents. My predecessor was a black woman when there are too few here. Is all too unusual too. In researching this, 2018, Peterborough has had 6 Conservative MPs. Between them, they have Michael and St George. Posh. An Olympic gold medal, inspiring a famous scene from the film Chariots of Fire. I suspect that my chances of doing that are about as good as my any of those other titles. But I do hope that anyone growing up in Peterborough today can look at me and my predecessor and know that whatever their gender, class, race or religion, they deserve the opportunity to succeed. Because we are a diverse city, and our representation should be so too. That word to represent, to understand the lives of our constituents and to change them for the better. That is politics at its best. It was back in 1790 that Parliament legislated for an improvement commission for Peterborough, responsible for paving, cleaning and lighting the street. Now we are centuries on, yet after a decade of austerity, we face similar challenges. Research from the library shows that in the decades 2010, our city has lost funding. Austerity has gone further and faster than ever before. Of cases where crimes aren't investigated police. As a member of this House, it is my job to make law. But what use are those if they are not enforced? I campaigned on local issues, but these are national issues too. Without food and services without proper funding. Survive on 0-hour contracts. Because despite the damage, austerity that I am proud to represent. We have a rich history and the finest medieval painted ceiling in Europe. Settled Meadow Homestead. The monks who built who arrived to plunder it and later settled themselves. Over centuries, we have made and traded products from bricks to wool, built a cathedral and buried Mary Queen of Scots and Catherine of Aragon. Then became a new town with new industries. I worked in a travel agent trade that gave the city many of its jobs, and now we have a mix of the agricultural, the industrial and the new services of our time. A Labour government built social housing for the people on a grand scale and ensured houses were available at a reasonable price. The Peterborough Development Corporation planned for the health and welfare of local people who benefited from community schools, the country park at Ferry Meadows, and a public library. We need to rediscover our country's ability to make things and make things work. But because beyond our history, geography or industry. It is above all the people of Peterborough who will be my great passion. Of all the speeches I researched, I was struck by Keir Hardie's in 1901. And he said, the true test of progress is not the accumulation of wealth in the hands of the few, but the elevation of people as a whole. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I too promise to work for the people as a whole, and I will do everything in my power to succeed.
Very briefly, if we can, Owen Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Great pleasure to follow the honourable the new member for Peterborough. Never an easy thing to give a maiden speech, particularly when an atmosphere like this evening, and I offer my heartiest congratulations. She skillfully held the attention of the House, and I think whatever the result of the vote later on this evening, I think we probably all wish her well for the future. Mr. Speaker, I'll be very brief because I know others need to get in. And I'd like to just very quickly restate that every single member of this chamber supports the Belfast Agreement, which was the result of a long peace process, and we would love to see the institutions up and running, but we should never forget that peace process and that Belfast Agreement could never come about without the conditions created by the extraordinary professionalism, skill and courage of hundreds of thousands who served in the British Armed Forces, British Security Services and the RUC. And I'd very briefly like to touch on the question of prosecutions of veterans, which were touched on by the Secretary of State and the Shadow Secretary of State. I have been going to Northern Ireland for many years. I continue to go there regularly. I've never yet met a single member of the Security Force Armed Forces who would like to see an amnesty. They put their lives on the line 24 hours a day to maintain the rule of law, to ensure that those who believe in pursuing their political aims through peaceful legal means prevail. And they do not want an amnesty. They do not want to be on the same level as those terrorists that had absolutely a hideous refusal to respect the rule of pursued their aims by violent criminal acts. So very, very briefly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, could the Secretary of State, and above all the Shadow Secretary of State, not change any laws, but ensure that in future no further prosecutions can come about unless there is categorically new evidence pursuing these old veterans time and again is wrong when there is not new evidence. And secondly, a very key feature is that can they guarantee together, working together, that the framework requires a senior lawyer to guarantee that there will be a fair trial. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It does feel somewhat absurd that there's so much to say in relation to the reports today, but so little time in which to say it. That is deeply, deeply frustrating, because I know that the people of Northern Ireland, the representatives of Northern Ireland, and that is being denied. We are currently in a situation of political turmoil across the United Kingdom, but that turmoil and turbulence is all the more worse in Northern Ireland due to the fact that there are no Northern Ireland institutions. I just want to very, very briefly reiterate the offer that the Democratic Unionist Party have made to Sinn Féin. That offer is because of the exceptional circumstances that we find ourselves in, to go back into government immediately, but not just to do that with blind faith, but to do that by agreement, that we will enter in and discuss the issues we are currently discussing in this talks process and cannot get resolution on. And by agreement, if there is no resolution to those, then the institutions will fall. That offer is there to Sinn Féin. We would ask all political parties to urge them to do that. There's no risk. They can get back into government. We can get on with talking about these issues, deal with historical institutional abuse payments, deal with the much needed funds for severely injured victims, deal with health and education and the real policies impacting on people every day across Northern Ireland. That is the offer that is there. I believe it is an absolutely reasonable one. I would ask Sinn Féin to consider it seriously, and for everybody in this House and beyond to urge them to take that up. We live in exceptional times. We should be doing something exceptional to try to resolve.
Sorry, Stella Creasy.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. All of us in this chamber would like to see the Stormont Assembly restored, but we tabled these self-executing clauses because we recognise that the human rights of the Northern Ireland shouldn't be abandoned in the face of political indecision. It now falls to us to hold the Secretary to State to account for how he is enacting this, because we are 35 days away from the possibility that these clauses will become law. So can I ask him to give us some more detail? In particular, he talks about consultation. Can he confirm whether there is going to be public involvement in that consultation? Because I think it's really important for us as a House to be clear that just as we would not ask non-medical professionals a vasectomy, we shouldn't be doing it when it comes to an abortion. We also need to understand the timeline that he's got for us, because I agree with the concerns that have been raised across this House about the interim period and what will happen when we decriminalise sections 58 and 59 of the Offences Against the Person Act 1861 on the 22nd of October if the Assembly isn't reconstituted. I do note that the Infant Life Preservation Act will remain any regulation at all simply isn't true, and in this debate we must deal with fact, not scaremongering. But still, can he say and confirm that he's talking to the Royal Colleges, the actual actual medical experts. He also says in the report that there is a cross-departmental government working body. Can he tell us who is on that body and what their remit is? He talks about talking to the Northern Ireland Human Rights Commission, but it's the Equalities Commission that would have any jurisdiction in terms of that consultation. So when has he spoken to them? With those days to go, what is his message to women in Northern Ireland who will need an abortion on the 22nd of October, whether because they have a fetal abnormality or indeed are a victim of rape or incest, or simply do not want to be forced to continue an unwanted pregnancy? And how will he make these reports CEDAW compliant? His own report is going to set that out, the international models that he's looking at. When he's managing this interim process, above all, can he give us the confidence tonight that the mother of a 15-year-old girl who is facing a prosecution because she got abortion pills for her daughter who was in an abusive relationship will not face a prosecution from the 22nd of October? Because if we do one thing in this House this evening that is constructive, let us take the stress and pressure off that family. And finally, Mr. Speaker, the government said they wanted more time. That's why they amended this clause in the House of Lords. Everybody here has talked about the importance of dealing with that interim period. It won't be dealt with by law, it will be dealt with by regulation. So can the Minister set out precisely what regulations he is looking at now, so that when we get to that 35-day period, actually we can shorten it and give everybody comfort here that the human rights of the women of Northern Ireland will continue to be upheld?
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I just speak very, very quickly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in relation to the abortion component of the report? I'm still aghast at what Section 9 of the Executive Information Bill actually proposes. In Northern Ireland, we have developed a different approach to abortion, which robust statistical research suggests means that around 100,000 who would not be had we embraced the 67 Abortion Act. 100,000 lives is a lot of people. And in this context, it's no great surprise that our approach is dearly held. The democratically elected Northern Ireland Assembly considered this matter as recently as 2016. It voted not to change the law in any way. It's no surprise that on the 9th of July, every Northern Irish member who takes their seat in Westminster voted against an attempt to overturn our law. What, however, is particularly shocking is what is brought out clearly in the report before us today is something I don't think has dawned on most members of this House with great respect. When we asked to consider what was then the entirely new clause in 9 on the 18th of July, is that it introduced something that was not present in the provision we debated on the 9th of July. What is now Section 9 does not just overturn our legal tradition. It quite astonishingly does not require anything to be put in place for 5 whole months, and that goes against what the Honourable Lady had said just before me. If the Northern Ireland Assembly is not restored by the 21st of October, then on the 22nd of October, all our law governing will disappear until the point at which a child is deemed and capable of being born alive. And I want to put on record, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that 60% of the poll in Northern Ireland said they didn't want any change. And what I'm saying to this House today is not to make the change against the wishes of the people of Northern Ireland. We had a rally at Stormont and Friday past. 25 to almost 30,000 people walked to retain the rights of the unborn, of the baby in the womb. That has to be preserved.
Paisley.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It is a matter of profound regret the state has not been able tonight to introduce legislation to this House as promised on the institutional historical sex abuse cases. Indeed, in a letter that he sent to the members of the Northern Ireland Affairs Select Committee no later than the 6th of September, he indicated that he would be seeking to make swift progress. I would hate to see slow progress if this is what is swift progress, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Indeed, members of Survivors Together have already responded that this is an appalling disgrace, and other victims groups have indicated how disappointed they are. The member from Walthamstow quite rightly said that she wanted to have detail about issues to do with abortion legislation. It is right and proper that the House gets the detail, that they see the stark reality that comes into play from the end of October this year. I would like to ask the Secretary of State, who will be performing
order?
Under what rules will they be performed?
I've now got to put the question, Mr. Paisley. I do apologise, but it's now the time. The question is, as on the order paper, as many of that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary. We now come to the programme motion to be moved formally.
I beg to move.
The question is, as on the order paper, as many we begin with Lord's Amendments 1, with which it will be convenient to consider Lord's Amendments 2 to 12. I call the Minister to agree with Lord's Amendments 1. Minister Kevin Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that this House agrees with Lord's Amendment number 1. Given the wide consensus that this bill has attracted, I don't propose to go on too long and say that the government committed to bring the spirit of it's nice to be liked, isn't it? The government committed to bring the spirit of several amendments that were supported in this House at report stage to the other place, with appropriate wording and at the appropriate place in the bill. We are pleased that these amendments were also supported in the other place and are now included on the face of the bill. This includes an amendment on heritage, which was brought forward by the member for East Worthing and Shoreham. It requires that in exercising its functions, the sponsor body must have regard to the special architectural, archaeological and historical significance of the Palace of Westminster. As agreed in this House, the bill now places a duty on the sponsor body to require the delivery authority, when considering the award of a contract in respect to the carrying out of the parliamentary building works, to have regard to the respective contractors' policy relating to corporate social responsibility and their policies and procedures relating to employment, including in relation to the blacklisting of employees. I am especially grateful for the collaborative approach and constructive contribution the member for the City of Chester made in formulating this amendment. The bill now also information about persons to whom contracts in respect to the carrying out of the parliamentary building works have been awarded, in particular as regards their size and the areas in which they operate. I'm particularly grateful to the member for Hackney South and Shoreditch for her collaboration in formatting this amendment. Lastly, in exercising its functions, the sponsor the need to ensure opportunities to secure economic or other benefits of the parliamentary building works are available in all areas of the United Kingdom. I'd particularly like to thank the member for Airdrie and Shotts for collaborating on this amendment and for his work as a member of the shadow sponsor body. Appropriate place and appropriately drafted. Other amendments have passed in the Lords and are now also included in the bill, which I consider echo the will of this House, particularly as they build on the recommendations of the Plea Legislative Joint Committee. Building works in clause 2.5 of the bill. From close scrutiny both by the Joint Committee and its passage through both Houses. I hope this House, considered the amendments passed in the other place, will concur with them and support the passing of this bill as it stands, so we can progress with these important work generations.
Order. The question is that this House agrees with the Lords in their Amendment 1. Valerie Vaz.
It's been a tremendous. I was one of the people that actually Chair, and you have been absolutely outstanding. I'm going to come with the Education Centre, but I don't know how to describe it. You've been a stalwart in terms of equality and ensuring both in your efforts to help me in my role as Shadow Leader of the House. You've been absolutely exemplary, and I think I've missed business questions, and particularly your jibes at all of us. That was for you, Mr. Speaker. And bringing this bill back. And can I thank all honourable members on restoration and renewal, and I'm pleased it's come back. And I do want to pay tribute to the Right Honourable Member for Aylesbury, who started them on record, and I want to deal with them, Mr. Speaker, in three different chunks. One relating to the physical aspects, and the last lot, the future. Amendments, well, we've got a sponsor body who has a single client. Will be a single client on behalf of both the houses, which is a good way of working, and they will form the delivery authority as a company limited by guarantee. Amendments 10 and 12 require the sponsor body to lay its reports before Parliament. One of the key things that members Amendment 11 ensures that we know about all the contracts that are awarded to different companies and the people who operate around the estate. Amendment 1 is fairly important because it allows the prospective contractors' policies and procedures relating to employment, which is about the blacklisting of people. Many lives have been destroyed by the blacklist, by people being blacklisted and not being allowed to take the need to ensure that there are opportunities to secure other benefits. Parliament continues, and that was ago, and the Anglo-Saxons who were first involved in after the completion of the parliamentary building works, all parts of the estate are accessible to people with disabilities, and I know that the Worthing and Shoreham were involved in this and certainly raised it at third reading. Now, if we look at what happens at York Minster, we know that you can combine accessibility for people with disabilities and bringing the building up into its historic significance. As to the future, the public, as well as to education facilities. And Amendment 7 and make sure that Parliament's education and outreach facilities and programmes are ensured, and that they become a core part of the parliamentary estate and benefit a greater understanding of Parliament and our democracy. My honourable friend, the member for Glasgow North East, mentioned the craft school that Scotland, and I know that Historic England are aware of outstanding way of ensuring that all our crafts are secured for our future. Amendment 2 places a duty on the sponsor body to promote public understanding of the purposes is in the heart of the nation. Now, the important part and so it's important that we make sure that there is a deadline and that members and the public purse is not elastic. For future generations, and we support the bill.
Extremely grateful to the honourable lady. Mr. Patrick Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be very brief as well. I want to take the opportunity also to pay tribute to you following the announcement you've made. You were a huge source of support and particularly to myself since becoming the Chief Whip. I do remember the spokesperson for the shadow leader from the Labour Party said much of the R&R will be away family-friendly and much more accessible, and perhaps in the tradition of the rooms in Portlace House, there will, in the restored and renewed Parliament, be a Bercow room. Reflect on that legacy. The SNP have always recognised the need for reform and renewal of this place. We have our own views about how much money should be spent. Progress that this bill is making now. My honourable friend from Airdrie Shotts has shadow sponsor board. He's engaged significantly on this bill, including helping to secure what has become will benefit the whole of the United Kingdom and its constituent parts. He can't be here today, my honourable friend from Airdrie Shotts, because this morning his wife Carrie gave birth . I will be entitled to cast 2 votes on his behalf when we come back. We do hope those young girls will grow up in an independent Scotland, but we look forward to them being able to visit the House of Commons being renewed, and the biggest question on everybody's lips, I think, is whether the chamber will include reclining chairs for the likes of comfortable. So with that, we have look forward to seeing this bill progress to the Norman French Royal Assent later this
with the Lords in their Amendment 1. As many as have that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. With the leave of the House, we will take Lords Amendments 2 to 12. Agrees with the Lords in their Amendments 2 to 12. As many as have that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. The ayes have it. And I am immensely grateful to the honourable gentleman. Point of order, Mr Stephen Doughty.
Mr Speaker, it's become aware to me in the last few hours that the government are already seeking to circumvent the terms of the resolution that the House passed earlier on about the release of documents relating to prorogation and Operation Yellowhammer. Mr Speaker, would you be we can find out how those papers could be laid during this period, because obviously there are a number of ways in which the government can lay them, including the publication of command papers, the release on websites, and surely, given the House has now clearly passed that by a majority, the government should release the information.
Well, observing our proceedings, think that that's a proper way for one colleague to show respect for another. Incumbent upon the Chair in this case to seek to and the honourable gentleman has raised a very legitimate point. The simple answer: the government must comply with the humble address passed by a debate has happened, a decision has been made, and it is incumbent upon the government to comply. It's been decided, the spirit, purpose and content of which are entirely clear. It's about doing what Parliament wants, which is what most people would expect their elected Parliament to do. I don't require any help from somebody. It's a prorogation, though not of dissolution. Votes and Proceedings Office shall be deemed to all at least to me at this point that seems capacities, the very considerable intellect. Yes, indeed. Point of order, Mr. Chuka-Ramuna.
Whether you might be able to assist, Mr. Speaker. Under the Civil Service Code of Conduct for Government Special Advisers by the taxpayer, a special advisor may not undertake work for a political official resources for party political activity. Based on widespread special advisor, Mr. Dominic Cummings, almost certainly request.
Whether it's something upon which I can adjudicate remains to be seen. But I'll only know that if I hear it, and hyena noises render it rather more difficult.
Secretary on the 13th of August, asking for details of government and in particular who they were employed by and whether they were paid out of the public purse. In the case of Mr. Cummings, I asked if he is not paid by public funds, whether Mr. Speaker, this is an incredibly important matter of public interest, particularly given we are about to prorogue and potentially thereafter enter office. When we were doing points of order earlier, replied saying that they would not provide a response to my freedom of information December. That is clearly unsatisfactory. I tried to raise it with the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster earlier, but he refused to take any interventions. Conservative Party purposes in this way.
I'm sorry. Resort to my usual advice to quizzical members in these circumstances. Persist. Seek a meeting. Press. Entirely legitimate question. Don't take no for an answer. It's a very extremely strict, and what the honourable gentleman says I have no reason to suppose the rules have changed. I can't possibly say what is or isn't on the part of particular individuals now. But that it is a legitimate matter of public interest, rather than something simply to be treated as the subject of cheap badinage and ribaldry. The honourable gentleman will pursue it. And I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman. I hope he is suitably in pursuit of his efforts. We now come to the motion on
Before I begin, may I join honourable members and though we may not always have agreed on everything, I believe you've always acted so with Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the motion standing in my name under the fixed term. The Right Honourable Member for Islington North became the first leader of the opposition in the history of our country. By declining the opportunity I wait to see how he responds. Referring to his surrender bill, he said, and I quote, last week. Let this bill pass. The surrender bill, the surrender act has gained royal assent. He has done his level best to make this country's chances of a successful negotiation. By his own logic, he now back an election. And so, Mr. Speaker, I am retabling the motion. Of the reality that an election is the only way to break the deadlock in the House and to serve the national interest by giving whoever is Prime
willing to obey the law of the land.
Yes, that's a matter for procedural adjudication by the Chair. Dr. Sarah Wollaston, point of order.
Speaker, I have a point of order on behalf of the Liaison Committee, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister gave an undertaking that he would appear before the Liaison Committee. 3:30. The Liaison Committee have met